Well, it had to be stupid, didn't it? It had to be stupid. It couldn't just be a normal game. It couldn't just be a normal loss. It couldn't just be a normal win. God forbid that outcome. It couldn't just be normal. It had to be stupid, didn't it? Because when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And Pitt's stupid prize in this stupid game was a loss and falling to 2-5. Losing to Wake Forest, 21-17 in so many ridiculous ways that I don't even think I can count them. I mean, like, we're going to sit here and I'm going to go through my legal pad and all these pages and all these notes and this false start penalty and that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty and this misspotted slide and that bizarre decision on third down. We're going to go through all of it. We're going to talk about it all here for the next hour, however long it takes. I mean, I've got the whiskey. I've got 2 beers here. I mean, that's how long we're going to talk about this. A whiskey and 2 beers. And there's a lot of whiskey in this bottle. And we'll talk about it however long we need to talk about it. And we'll talk about all these things. But what it all boils down to is Pitt is now 2-5 after losing to Wake Forest in one of the stupider games I have ever watched in my life. And I've watched a lot of stupid football in my time. And I mean, and we're not going to make this personal about any individuals. But I've watched a lot of dumb games, a lot of stupid games that just left me befuddled of wondering what is going on. What is happening right now? And why is it happening? And who is the rational adult saying this should happen? In so many situations with this game. And you end up losing to a third-team quarterback who has, at points over the last 2 years, played safety, tight end, and running back. And he goes out, and I mean, Santino Marucci, what was his final stat line? 12 of 21 for $151 and a touchdown, but he throws the game-winning touchdown pass to Cameron Height, a tight end who got one pass all day, and he makes a diving catch for 15 yards and the touchdown. But of course, he only makes that diving catch for 15 yards on a touchdown because Pitt gives up a 13-yard or a 24-yard catch to number 13 on the 4th and 1 before that. And of course, they're only really in range to pull that off because Donovan McMillan, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm jumping around because so many different things happened in this game. But the closing stretch here, where Pitt takes the lead in rather impressive not rather impressive, in very impressive fashion. Scores in a minute and a half. Great touchdown catch by Bub Means. Great drive there to score the go-ahead touchdown and take a 17-14 lead. And then you get the interception, the game-sealing interception. There were multiple instances here where the game was sealed for Pitt, and the MJ Devonshire interception was an instance where the game was sealed for Pitt. But Donovan McMillan takes not one, but 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. And while they really didn't focus too much on the replays on that, you had to watch the replay of the MJ Devonshire interception to see the boneheaded things that Donovan McMillan did, and they were both stupid and both merited a penalty, but they end up putting the offense back at the 7. Terrible spot. Now, if they were at the 7 or the 27 or the 37, it doesn't matter. They were going to run the ball twice as they did. And then they get a really good play on 3rd down. 3rd and 9. Christian Bear runs, past the sticks, slides. Nope. Ruled that he began his slide before the stick. And I just got a text message from someone. Do you think the slide call was good? Do you think he was actually past the stick? He was close. He was close. Now, ACC network broadcasts being what they are, they've got like 2 cameras in the whole game, so you're only going to see 2 angles, and you'll never really get the definitive up and down the line of scrimmage angle because it's the ACC network, and, you know, they gave, I don't want to bash the production there. I was going to go down a road of bashing the production and the play-by-play saying, Santino Marucci, this guy's a baller. He's not a baller. He's a 3rd-string quarterback, former safety. He's not a baller. This instant classic. It's not an instant classic. It was a ridiculous game. It was ugly. It wasn't a classic game. But I digress. We don't get a good angle on the slide play, so we can't see if he's past the lead stick. But it's close enough that, boy, it's tough. It's a judgment call. I think he's past the stick. The official didn't. And so Vayers ruled down. Then, of course, the punt is only 32 yards, and so Wake Forest has a chance. There were like 3 different instances there where the game could have been sealed. The interception, Donovan McMillan doesn't need to take, if he doesn't take those penalties, instead of the ball being at the 7, where would they have been? Where was the interception? Let me find the yard line on the Wake Forest interception at the 37. Okay, so they lost 30 yards on those 2 penalties. So they could have been at the 37 instead of the 7. So that's number 1 instance where they blew the opportunity to seal the game. Number 2 is where Veer slid too early. I mean, just run out of bounds. Yeah, you stop the clock, but you get to, I mean, you're at least, you get a first down. You're going to force Wake Forest to take all of those timeouts and everything like that. And then number 3, you get a terrible punt. So you had 3 different opportunities to just put this game away. And after all the ridiculous that came in the 58 minutes before these final few snaps, you had 3 different opportunities to put this game away, and you failed in every single instance. And that's to say nothing of the lackluster offense, the poor offense that did nothing throughout this game, when they should have had 5-6 touchdowns. This should have been a 42-7 game. So Wake Forest defense isn't good. Wake Forest offense isn't good. Should have won this game 42-14, 35-14. And you know what? You give up a game win or a touchdown at the end on a diving catch by the tight end who's only targeted once in the whole game. If you give that up, well, that's okay. You win 35-21 instead of 35-14. But because you can't score with any kind of consistency, because your offense is still inept for such long portions of the game, you're now in a situation where your defense gives up 1 or 2 drives, and it's college football. Your defense might give up a touchdown or 2. But if your offense is as bad as Pitt's offense is, as ineffective as Pitt's offense is, if you give up that 1 drive, you're toast. You're toast. And that's what happened here. And they still had 3 opportunities to close the game out. And they shot themselves in the foot every single time. 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, sliding short of the sticks, or even close enough to leave it up to the official's judgment to raise the question in the official's mind. And then the shanked punt, which was just the latest in a series of shanked punts by Caleb Junko, who had 1 punt that netted 10 yards today. And that's how you lose. And that's how you lose to a game, lose a game to a team starting its 3rd-string quarterback, a guy who wasn't even playing quarterback like a year ago. That's how you lose to a team that was 0-3 in ACC play and was, really struggling. And that's how you fall to 2-5. And that's how you have the kind of season Pitt has had so far through 7 games. And that's how you're going to continue having the season that Pitt is having through the next 5 games. There was a path to 6 wins. There was a path to bowl eligibility. There was a path to at least something approaching a respectable finish. But that path included beating the lousy teams on your schedule. The way you beat lousy teams on the schedule is you don't shoot yourself in the foot. Guess what Pitt did? You play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. We need to get the whiskey out. And I'm going to get to the comments and questions. This will be one of these post-game shows where I'm going to talk a lot. I'm going to say a lot. I got a lot of thoughts. But you guys have a lot of comments and questions too. Super chatters are already lining up. So we're going to get to them. Of course, if you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, click that little $sign down at the bottom. You kick a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that for sure. We appreciate your support, and we will make sure we get to your comment and your question. There are a lot of comments and questions in there. We're probably not going to get to all of them. We'll get to as many as we can. If you're a super chatter, we will definitely get to your comment and your question. So if you got one, a comment or a question, post it and be a super chatter. If you have something to drink, my friend, bottoms up, because, what else are we going to do? All right, who started us off? Bill Florigen. All right, Bill. Bill's a super chatter, and we appreciate you, Bill. He says, I don't care about the defense. I don't care about the offensive line. I don't care about any of it except one thing. Why is Frank Signetti still with this team? There's no benefit. He will only hurt Christian Veer's development. I like a lot of what Christian Veer did tonight. I like a lot of it. I like how he attempted to execute the game plan. I like how he worked in a lot of this no huddle stuff that they were doing. I thought that was an interesting wrinkle, something we haven't seen. We have not seen Pitt, certainly this year, and I don't even think last year, doing that sort of no huddle, get up to the line of scrimmage, let the defense show their alignment and kind of how they're getting set up, then look to the sideline, get a play call. I liked it. I think that was a good changeup, and I think Ver was able to operate. I think he looked comfortable working that way. They had one delay of game, and it was an intentional delay of game on a punt. I don't think, or a fourth down situation. I don't think they had any problem getting the play in. There was one or two that it got low, but they didn't get called for any. They obviously had other procedural issues. They had false starts, a handful of false starts kind of scattered throughout the game on a variety of different players. And actually, that was another one. Another opportunity to close out the game. It was before, when it was still 10-7, Wake Forest, or Pitt's got the ball 4th and 5 at the Wake Forest 49, and Gavin Bartholomew takes a false start. But to Bill's point, the play before that, 3rd and 3 from the Wake Forest 47, yes, that's a situation where you feel like you're in 4-down territory. So you can run the ball there. In most instances, you can run the ball there, get 1 or 2 yards and set up for 4th down, or get stopped at the line of scrimmage and set up and still run a 4th and short play. But I think it was just so obvious on that 3rd and 3 from the 47 that that's what they were going to do, that they were going to hand it off to Sebo Flemister, that he gets stopped for a 2-yard loss. That I think Wake Forest knew it was coming a mile away. I knew it was coming a mile away. You knew it was coming a mile away. That was probably a situation for play action or for a short throw. You've been working those out passes all game long. Maybe you out and up, it's a little quick double move, something to sort of trick Wake Forest, something where you've been setting it up throughout the game by throwing a million out passes at the sideline. And you could finally, make the most of it, you capitalize. And then if you throw incomplete, you come back here at 4th and 3 on the 47, and you got a little chance. They don't do that. They hand it off. They lose 2 yards. They're at 4th and 5 now. And Gavin Bartholomew, they're lined up. They're going to run the play, or at least they seem like they're going to run the play. And Gavin Bartholomew jumps. It's a false start. It's 4th and 10, and they end up having to punt. And Wake Forest drives for the touchdown with a defensive holding in there. I liked a lot of what Christian Ver did in this game. He wasn't perfect. He missed on some throws. I think he's going to continue missing on some throws. I think he could have taken more shots. I think he could have pushed the ball downfield more. I think in some of the instances when he did push the ball downfield, he was able to have success. The 2 passes to Dejon Reynolds, touchdown pass to Bub Means, even the pass before the touchdown pass when he went to the sideline, instead of going to the sideline 6 yards downfield, he went to the sideline 14 yards downfield, and it was an effective play. It was a good pass. It was a great catch by Bub Means, who had, I think we would all agree, his best game as a Pitt Panther. Bub Means did. But there's no reason for this offense to go in the severe drought that it did. Let's look at the drive chart, okay? Drives, Pitt, touchdown, great. Punt, turnover and downs, punt, turnover and downs, punt, field goal, punt, touchdown, punt. And then the end of the half. Some of this is a little mistaken. I'm just sort of looking at the stats of how Pitt's final punt, they went, according to the official box score, 3 plays for minus 12 yards in 2 seconds, which obviously all of that would be inaccurate. It was a 3-play drive that gained 9 yards and took, I want to say 18 seconds off the clock. Look, the offense it's a mess, and it's been a mess, and it continues to be a mess. It hasn't really gotten better. I think putting in Christian Ver was an improvement. I think it has improved the passing game. It's given them a chance to throw the ball with some effectiveness. The running game hasn't been reliable. Let's see what officially, again, some of these stats are going to be questionable because the official box score is still sort of catching up, it seems. But officially, Pitt was credited with 112 rushing yards. Sebo Flemister, 23 for 105. That might be his first career 100-yard game. We'll have to see. Christian Ver finished with 302 passing yards. That would be his first career 300-yard game. Bub Means' first career 100-yard game. He had 9 catches for 109. That's all beside the point. The offense kept Wake Forest in the game. Pitt's defense played well enough for basically 3 quarters, and even longer than that. I mean, you could say they played well enough for 3 quarters and almost 9 minutes before they gave up the 2 touchdowns in the final 6 minutes. And yeah, the defense is going to take some blame for that, but I'm with you, Bill. I'm not putting much blame on the defense for this one. I'm really not. And I'm not really putting much blame on Christian Veer. And to be honest, not the offensive line either. You know, the offensive line didn't do a great job run blocking, although Sebo Flemister ended up with 100 yards, although he had, 2 30-yard carries and a 20 or 2 20s and a 10, something like that. But they generally, I think they kept Christian Veer pretty clean. Christian Veer, how many times did he even get sacked? Let me look at the stats here. None. Christian Veer wasn't sacked once. He was under pressure a little bit. Officially, they gave Wake Forest's players 7 quarterback hurries. But by and large, I thought he had time. I thought the pass protection was fine. The run blocking wasn't great, but I think Wake Forest was loaded up to stop the run. And so some of that's going to make that a challenge until your passing game shows that it needs to be, is a force to be reckoned with. So I don't have an issue with Christian Veer. I don't have an issue with the receivers. Other than just, I would have liked to have seen Kenny Johnson more. I don't have an issue with, tight ends. I mean, what little involvement they actually had. I don't have an issue with the running backs. I think Rodney Hammond and Sebo Flemister are fine backs. I think Hammond is a better back, and I don't know why Flemister is getting more work unless there's a lingering injury issue with Hammond, which I think may be the case. I don't really have an issue with these players. But there's a reason this offense is struggling. And there's a reason this offense continues to struggle. And there's a reason this offense has been bad for, I say bad as a generalization, but it hasn't been good for the better part of the last 20 games. Has it? I mean, how many times would you look at the last 20 games and say, boy, the offense had a great game. They scored 38 points or something in the Sun Bowl. They got 5 field goals. And the quarterback was under 50% completion. They didn't really have that good of a game. Maybe the Miami game, I guess. The Virginia Tech game, obviously, Izzy set a Pitt record for rushing yards in a single game. So, the offense was really good there. But in terms of a balanced, effective passing, offensive attack, I would say today was the first time. Boy, I wonder when the last time Pitt had a 300-yard passer and a 100-yard rusher in the same game, and a 100-yard receiver. Got to think there haven't been too many of those, and certainly not in the last 20 games. More super chatters here. Michael B. is a regular. Chris, I'm sorry, but this is the worst loss in the Narduzzi era. I really thought that Christian Veer as a quarterback would turn their season around, but I was obviously wrong. The whole staff needs fired, and it looks like 2-10. I am pissed off. Dude sucks. Well, Michael B., you keep it's unfortunate for you because you have to keep changing it, because before last week's game, it was, the whole season looks like it's going to be 1-11, and now you kind of had to back off of that. But now that they lost again, we can go back to saying, well, it looks like they're going to be 2-10. They're not going to be 2-10. They're going to win. They're going to win a couple more over the course of these next 7 games. The question is, are they going to win 3? Can they get to 5 wins? This is what we're talking about now. We're now talking about a team that can it find a way to get to 5 wins. And 5 wins is about that's a low bar to clear. But if they play the way they played today, if they do the stupid things they did today, and if their offense goes into a hole for a giant middle section of the game like it did today, then they are going to be scraping to try to get to 4 or 5 wins. They're not going to be 2-10. I don't think they're going to be 3-9. I think they'll win a couple more out of this next 5 game stretch. It's just a question of, do they go 2-3 or do they go 3-2? The pieces are there. There's no reason this team should be 2-5 right now. Personnel wise, aside from the quarterback issue of the first 5 games, which is something that we can certainly talk about and will talk about at length. And I think we'll probably even talk about it even more once the season ends. There's no reason they should be 2-5 right now. I believe they have talent that exceeds that of a 2-5 football team, but that's what they are. They are 2-5. Largely of their own doing. It's on Pitt to have stuck with Phil Dracovic as long as they do through the first 5 games. And it cost them wins to do so. And it's on Pitt with all of the mistakes and just general ridiculousness that they displayed today to lose again. And I'm not saying that, boy, if they had just switched quarterback sooner, if they had done this, if they had done that, they would have beat Carolina. They weren't going to beat Carolina. There's no reason this team should have lost to Cincinnati or West Virginia or today. Or Virginia Tech. Almost forgot that charmer in there too. Alan McMurray is a super chatter, says, here we are again. No discipline, 6 pre-snap penalties, then McMillan with the double personal foul, followed by another terrible Junko punt. 2-10 because they're not beating BC after seeing BC today. I mean, Boston College is come and go. We'll see where they are, where Boston College is by the time they get here. Yeah, their quarterback looks pretty dynamic. He looks pretty good. There's a chance they might have looked at the Louisville game last week and said, boy, Pitt looks really good and looks really dynamic. I'm not going to write them off. I'm not going to say, wow, that's a definite loss now. I mean, I still think Boston College is of questionable quality. I still think Syracuse is of questionable quality. We'll see how Duke fares tonight. We'll see if Riley Leonard is back and how they proceed. Here's the reality. So I think Pitt is talented enough to still take care of what they need to take care of against Syracuse, Boston College, and potentially be competitive with Duke. I think they're talented enough for that. But will they get out of their own way, both on the field and off the field? Will they get out of their own way and actually win those games? They should, but they should have won today. And they didn't because doing the things that smart teams don't do and making the mistakes that smart teams don't make. And we could go through the entire game and find so many instances of problems and issues and times where you said, what were you thinking? Why would you do that? Why would you make that decision in that situation? But we really just have to focus on the final 68 seconds. 68 seconds. 68 seconds because it was a minute 8 was on the clock when Wake Forest snapped the ball and MJ Devonshire picked it off. A minute 8. And in those 68 seconds, they had the 2 penalties on Donovan McMillan, they had the slide that was short of the sticks, and they had a 32-yard punt. I mean, killer mistakes. Mistakes that keep, I mean, you have a slim margin for victory. If you are Pitt right now with your situation, you have a slim margin for victory. And if you make that many mistakes in that short a period of time, and really, I mean, you go up to the punt was at 45 seconds. So you're looking at, in the span of 23 seconds, they made all of those mistakes in the span of 23 seconds of clock time. Now, I mean, Wake Forest took 2 timeouts in there, so that, slowed it down. But in the span of 23 seconds of clock time, you had the 2 McMillan penalties, you had the slide short of the sticks, and you had the punt that went 32 yards. And you lost the game because of all of those. And if you just didn't screw up one of them, you win the game. If Donovan McMillan doesn't take both of those penalties, hell, if he just takes one of those penalties, they probably win the game. If he doesn't take both of them, and they were egregious, and they were dumb, and they merited the flags, but if he doesn't take both of them, they win the game. If Christian Bear doesn't slide short of the sticks, obviously they win the game. If Caleb Junko gets a regular punt, punts it 50 or 60 yards because he's punting from the 8 or from the 16, if he punts it further than 32 yards, they win the game. 3 mistakes in the span of 23 seconds that sunk this game. After it looked like the game was sunk when they went down 14-10, but they had a great drive. Great plays from Christian Bear, great play from Dejon Reynolds, a couple of great catches from Bub Means, and they went ahead. And they were going to sneak out of Winston-Salem with a win. A win that, for at least a little bit, looked like they weren't going to be able to pull off. There's a lot of reasons they lost this game. A lot of reasons. That 23-second span is very acutely the reason that they lost this game. But they also lost the game because the offense went into a black hole basically after the first drive. Basically after the first drive, they went into a black hole, and they couldn't decide what they wanted to do. They couldn't decide what they wanted the passing game to be, and they couldn't decide when to lean on the running game. Wake Forest gave up 500 rushing yards in the last 3 games to ACC teams, 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games to ACC teams. And Pitt decides, we're going to throw a lot of out patterns. We think that's the way to push the ball down the field. We think that's the way to build our drives. We think that's the way we're going to score touchdowns and win this game. We had 10 carries for the running backs in the first half. And it wasn't a lack of opportunity. They had the ball for 17 minutes in the first half. They owned time of possession. They had 40 plays to Wake Forest running 23 plays at halftime. But they handed the ball off to their running backs 10 times in the first half. You're not even committed to establishing the run. For as much as Pat Narduzzi and Frank Cignetti talk about the running game, they're not even committed to establishing the run, except for the most obvious of situations. And I hate to be that guy who's like, well, I knew you were going to run it every time you ran it, but it felt telegraphed. They come out in the second half and try and go with the I formation with Daniel Carter. You want to guess how that did? You don't run the I formation. We talked about this week. We talked about this during the live show, I think, on Wednesday night. And the I formation does no good for you. It does nothing for you because all it does is bring more defenders into the box. All it does is bring more defenders close to the line of scrimmage. Your best chance at running, I think, if you're Pitt, is spreading it out. 3 receivers, tight end. And you might even put the tight end out wide and run out of a 4-wide set. That's probably your best chance. Spread the defenders out. Try to create a little space in the defense. Bringing in the I formation with a tight end or two, you're just inviting more guys to be close to the line of scrimmage to make it even less likely that you're going to... I remember right out of the Pitt's first drive of the second half, they get the ball. They go to the I formation. They got Daniel Carter, the fullback, out there. Man, it's 1972, and we are going to do it. And they get 4 yards on the first carry, and they get -4 on the next carry. So on 2 plays out of the I formation, their first 2 snaps, they got a net of 0 yards, brother. That's how they did it back in the 70s. Get out of here. I formation. What do you... I liked some of the offensive design in terms of going no huddle, getting up to the line of scrimmage, seeing the defense, getting the play call from the sideline. I like that. I thought that was a good way to mix it up. I liked all the use of pistol and shotgun, which is largely what they do. They're not a heavy under center team. They get a lot of under center, but it's not. I wouldn't even think it's the majority of their plays. I don't think they're lined up under center. So I generally like that look, but the never-ending stream of 4 to 6 yard passes, really not really looking to push the ball downfield, even off of play action when they're lined up to stop your run, and then just no reliance on the running game to begin with. I think there are things Pitt can be good at, but I might be the only one who has that confidence. I'm not sure the Pitt coaches have confidence that they're good at anything on offense because they don't really seem to commit to anything on offense. And they don't really seem to know what they want to do or what they want to be. Let's see. We got some more super chatters in here. We do. Let's see who it is and what they got to say. Got a bunch. You guys are good. I like you guys. I want to kind of go through them in order. There should be a way I can sort this. All right. We got Alan McMurray. We got you already. Julian Martin, why not dive over the first down marker instead? I mean, yeah, there were a lot of things Christian Vera could have done there. He could have dove forward. He could have just run and taken a hit. He could have made sure he was past the stick and gone out of bounds. I mean, the clock's going to stop on first down anyway. I know it starts running, after they get the ball set, but I mean, you got the first down. If he would have run there, I think Wake Forest had... Well, they still had 2 timeouts, but their clock was at 45 seconds after that play, right? So you get up, you hand it off. Wake Forest calls timeout. It's 42 seconds. You get up, you hand it off. Wake Forest calls timeout. It's 39 seconds. They're out of timeouts. You hand it off, and you win the game. Run forward and get out of bounds. I like, it's great that you slid to stay in bounds, but run forward and get out of bounds. But make sure you get the first down. And I mean, I didn't know if maybe there could be a review on that situation. I don't think there was a good enough camera angle to really overturn anything. Because again, it's the ACC network. And they brought 2 cameras. Christian Ricketts, first time being a super chatter. We appreciate that. It says, our offense has the players to score, especially with Christian at quarterback, but Cignetti holds this team back. I mean, the offense has not been a net positive. I mean, like, realistically, you look over the last 20 games. How many times would you look at and you would say the offense was a net positive in that game? There was the Virginia Tech game last year where they, obviously, Izzy Abanikanda sets a school record for single game rushing. West Virginia last year, I mean, they scored 31 points before the MJ Devonshire pick 6, right? Duke, they didn't score that much. Keaton Slovis made a few nice throws. Syracuse, they didn't really score that much. Virginia, they were staked a 2-touchdown lead by the pick 6s. The Sun Bowl, they scored like 3 offensive touchdowns. This year, they pitched a shutout in the second half and outscored them 24-0. But that, in the Louisville game I'm talking about. How many games has offense won for this team in the last 20 games? Not sure there's all that many, and not really any that come to mind. And even this game, if that 17-14 lead had held up, if it had stood up, I'm not really sure I would have sat back and be like, yeah, man, offense did it. I mean, offense would have scored the game-winning drive, but I still don't. I mean, it would have been they still would have won a game scoring 2 touchdowns. And it's going to be very, very difficult to win a game scoring 2 touchdowns. At 17-14, you're not going to get many wins like this. This isn't the NFL. You need to score points. You need to score touchdowns, and Pitt doesn't do that very much. Respac Racing is a super chatter. I apologize. I missed your You put in the super chat, but I don't see what your comment was, so I apologize. Make sure if you're a super chatter, if you have something you want to say, make sure you put your comment in with the super chat so we can see it. I'll try and scroll through and see if I can find you. EV says, I don't want to hear anyone say Pitt deserved to lose. I get it's a lost season anyway, but they won this game and got robbed. ACC is a joke conference. Join the Big 12. Basketball season won't be any different. Yes and no. I mean, like, maybe they got robbed on that slide call. I don't think they got robbed on the 2 penalties on Donovan McMillan. I don't know if they got robbed on the holding calls on Marquez Williams, because we never saw a replay of the 2 defensive holding calls on Marquez Williams. There was one other who was there. Oh, there was one on A.J. Woods, but Pitt ended up getting the interception there. Later on that drive. We never saw replays of any of those. All we kept hearing is that they were getting a little handsy. They got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, show us a replay. Come on. ACC Network. I mean, give us something here so we can have an idea of what's going on in the game. So maybe they got robbed on the slide. Maybe, maybe not. You would need an angle that's right up and down. The line to gain to actually see when he started his slide. Everything else is sort of going at an angle, and it's tough to really judge from that perspective. But I would say this. I mean, you heard me read all those drives, right, in the middle, where Pitt goes touchdown, and then they go punt, punt, turnover on downs, punt, punt, turnover on downs, punt, field goal, punt, and then finally the touchdown. So, I mean, you have all those drives in there where you got like 1 first down and then you had to punt. The offense could have won this game. The offense should have won this game, and the offense kept Wake Forest in this game. The defense didn't keep Wake Forest in this game. It's not like every time the offense scored, the defense went out and gave up a touchdown. It's not like the offense scored 5 or 6 touchdowns, but the defense just couldn't stop them. And so it was a high-scoring game, and they kept Wake hanging around in that way. The offense kept Wake Forest hanging around, because the offense couldn't score and put this game away. There was no reason it should have been 7-7 at halftime. There's no reason it should have been 7-7, in the third quarter, right? It was 7-7. Yeah, the end of the third quarter. There's no reason for that. You need to score more points than that. When you are facing a team that has a struggling offense, you need to keep the pressure on. You need to put up the points. You need to put them behind and force that kid who's not a baller, no matter what the play-by-play guy on ACC Network says, is not a baller. He's a third-string quarterback and a former safety and a former tight end and a former running back. You need to put the pressure on him, Because as long as you let them hang around, as long as you couldn't score and extend that lead, as long as you kept it at a 7-7 game, they were going to keep running the ball and keep cracking on your defense and breaking through with the running game, which eventually they did. And then that kid only had to make like 3 good throws in the whole game. Marucci really only needed to make 3 good throws when it came down to it. I mean, maybe he made 4. But that's all he had to make because you couldn't extend the lead. You couldn't score to put the game away. You go up 2 or 3 touchdowns and he's got to make 10 good throws to win the game. He's not making them. They're not going to make those plays. You're going to get more interceptions like they got. When they forced him to throw, they made plays on the ball. P.J. O'Brien interception, M.J. Devonshire interception. They did to a rookie quarterback, a first-time starter, what you should do to a first-time starter, a guy with the inexperience that he had. But they didn't force him to throw. They couldn't extend the lead and put that pressure on him. And so, yeah, to some extent, they did deserve to lose. Maybe they got robbed. Maybe they should have snuck out at the end with a win. And maybe that slide call was a bad call. It never should have come to that. I talk about that 28-second stretch there where they, is it 28? Am I right about that? 15, 23. Excuse me, 23-second stretch where they committed to 3 crucial errors. And yes, they could have closed out the game in any of those instances. Just one fewer error in any of those instances, you could have closed out the game. But the reality is it shouldn't have come down to that. It shouldn't have come down to a 23-second stretch in the final 68 seconds. You should have put the game away a long time earlier than that. It should have been over at halftime. It should have been 28-7 at halftime so that kid goes into halftime thinking, oh my God, I got to win the game for this team. I have to win the game. I have to make all these passes. I have to do all this. You have to put the pressure on him. But instead, he went into halftime being like, holy cow, I didn't do anything. And here we are. We're tied. This is great. You let them hang around. And lost the game as a result. Let's see. Reespack Racing, I see another super chat for him. I'm sorry, I can't find. Oh, here's one. Time to get out of the ACC, Chris. No matter what mistakes we made, we should have won this game and would have, but for those Tobacco Road officials. Happens too often, period. I think sometimes I question the officiating, and I wonder what's really going on there. Like I say, we didn't see a replay of any of the defensive holding calls, so I don't know if those were good calls or bad calls. The false starts were earned, though. I know all the false starts were legit. I know the Donovan McMillan, I mean, he earned both of those. I mean, when you watch it, you can't drag a guy off. The play's over. You're not trying to block a guy. You're not trying to protect your quarterback or anything like that. He drags a guy off and then not just pulls him off of his teammate. That might have been enough. But then he drags him by the arm across the field. And then he gets up and goes over and starts shoving somebody else. What did you think was going to happen in that situation? Of course you got called for that. It was a terrible mistake to make. And so that's not Tobacco Road officiating, you know? The slide call, I don't know. We don't have a good angle on it. I've seen some angles where I'm like, look, he's clearly past the, what did he have to gain in that? It was 3rd and 9 from the 8, so he needed to gain the 17. And there's some angles where I look at it and I'm like, oh, he's clearly past the 17 before he starts to slide. And then there's some angles where they stop motion, freeze frame by frame, and it's, clearly looks like he's starting to slide before he gets to the 17. He's at the 16 where they ultimately ruled him down. I don't think there was a good enough angle to say definitively what it was or what it should have been. So I don't really think it's about the ACC screwing Pitt. I think it's just he needed to make sure there was no question. And he probably thought he made sure there was no question, but he left some question. Hogmuncher says, is this the worst Pitt team of the 21st century? No, it's not. 2006 was pretty bad. 2012 had some issues. They had some inspiring moments, but they had some issues. 2005 they lost at Ohio, if you recall, and then just got boat raced by West Virginia and Louisville. which happened 2 years in a row. Actually, 06 that happened too. I mean, they're in a bad way, and I think they've got some major issues and some things they need to change and correct and fix over the course of the next couple months, both in the season and after the season. But is it the worst of the 21st century? I don't know. I mean, it's rivaling it. They're 2-5, so yeah, they're going to be in that conversation, and they're probably going to post the worst record of a Pitt team in the 21st century. It's probably, I mean, that's probably the case. It's hard to see. I mean, I don't know how you could really project them to do better than 5-7. 5-7 feels like the good ending at this point. It feels like that'd be a positive result if they end up 5-7, which is pretty sad. Christopher Helms is a super chatter for the first time. Christopher says, let's have some fun. What was the last Pitt loss that was this ridiculous? I mean, I've seen some ridiculous stuff, Chris. Last Pitt loss. I mean, you go back to something like Virginia Tech in 17. You have Jester Weah tackled at the 1, and they have 4 shots from the 1, and they can't get it in. That was pretty ridiculous. And one of their touchdowns in that game was like a Nathan Bossery throw or Nathan Bossery touchdown catch on a trick play. Do you remember that? That was pretty ridiculous. The Armed Forces Bowl, the game against Houston, remember with multiple onside kicks recovered? That was pretty ridiculous. We've seen ridiculous games before. There's I don't know if this is the most ridiculous, but it's up there. And it ended in a really, it's the result was arrived at via stupid means. A lot of stupid means. There's another super chatter. There was. Biz says, Narduzzi needs to be put under the microscope. The team does not look prepared, and there are too many silly penalties. Terrible, disappointing play. I mean, the thing about looking prepared, they came out and scored a touchdown on the first drive and gave up 22 yards of offense in the first quarter, I think they were under 100 yards of offense allowed in the first half. Yeah, Wake Forest in the first half. Wait, let me bring up the stats here. In the first half, Wake Forest had 92 yards of offense. And Pitt had 167. And 167 is not a lot, but I mean, it's not terrible. And giving up less than 100 yards in the first half, I can't sit here and say, boy, you were unprepared. I thought they looked plenty prepared. I thought they had a game plan. I thought they did a pretty good job executing it, particularly on defense. And I think they came out on the first drive at least and executed their game plan on offense pretty well. I don't know about unprepared. I don't really go for that. As far as discipline, I mean, it's weird about the false starts. I'm not really sure what was going on there. They didn't have that issue last week. They only had 1 false start penalty last week, and that was on a wide receiver. It wasn't even on the offensive line. I know they were on the road this week, so that's a little bit more challenging, but they also were playing at Wake Forest, where let's see if they release the official attendance number. 31,000 is what they announced. So, I mean, 31,000 is not going to make a lot of crowd noise, and you're not going to run into a big problem with that. So I'm not really sure why they had that issue. I think there was a point early in the Narduzzi era, the first 3 or 4 years, where I would have been right there with you. Maybe even first 5 years, where I would have been like, yeah, this is an undisciplined team. I can distinctly remember some instances during the 2019 season where I said, this is an undisciplined team. And I felt like it emanated from the top. It trickled down from the top. The head coach carried himself in a certain way, and the players sort of fed off of that and took that as their cue to act in a certain way, and they ended up taking a lot of penalties for it. And I think there were discipline issues. I think it was an undisciplined team. I think there was a lack of discipline that year, and those first few years. But I think it has gotten better year after year after year. And I don't tend to look at this year's team as being all that undisciplined. This year's team, I mean, the problem for this year's team is bad offense. Plain and simple. Period, point blank. For whatever else we want to talk about, for whatever other issues we want to bring up, for however, we can talk about injuries to the linebackers. We can talk about lack of a pass rush. We can talk about this. We can talk about a lot of things. We can talk about the wide receiving core, how like 3 recruiting classes in a row have washed out, and now they have a bunch of transfers and a bunch of freshmen, and that's basically the whole thing. We can talk about how the running backs haven't really lived up to their billing. They haven't gotten enough yards. We can talk about the offensive line. We can talk about this and that. We can even talk about the quarterback play, and that's part of this conversation. But the long and short of it, the stark reality of it, the cold, harsh truth of the whole situation is that this team has been doomed by bad offense from the start. They are 2-5 because of their offense. And football is the ultimate team game. Pitt's offensive coordinator Frank Cignetti likes to say that. Football is the ultimate team game, and it is. There's 11 guys on the field at any one time for a team. There's 22 guys on the field total at any given time. There's a lot of moving parts. A lot of people have to do their jobs and have to do them right to get the whole thing to work. And so whenever that's the case, you're going to have a lot of reasons for any particular outcome. Good, bad, neutral, whatever it is. Every outcome has about 22 reasons why it happened. And maybe more, because you have the actions of all 22 players on the field, plus the play calls from both sides and the decision making, and then all these. You have 25 to 30 reasons why any single play goes the way it does. All right, so it's never just one thing. But out of those 30 different reasons that every single play goes the way it does, some weigh more than others. Some count for more than others. Some impact the situation more than others. And in the case of Pitt, pretty much for 7 games straight, the issue has been offense. And it was the issue today, and it was the issue last week, and it was the issue the week before, and the week before, and the week before, and the week before. And you can go back to the 13 games last year, too. The offense has been an issue. And if it was picking the wrong quarterback, it was picking the wrong quarterback. If it was running bad plays, it was running bad plays. If it was not having an offense that the players could execute, that's what it was. But the issue is offense. And I think that's more than being undisciplined. I think it's more than being unprepared. I think it's more than having injuries or playing the wrong guys or whatever it is that you're doing or whatever other reasons there are that cause a team to lose. And Pitt has lost because of all of those reasons. I mean, I listed that 23-second stretch there with the McMillan penalties and the slide that was short of the sticks and the 32-yard punt. And we covered all 3 phases with that. In those 23 seconds, Pitt screwed up in all 3 phases of the game. But it's still about offense because it never had to come down to that 23-second stretch. Never had to be about that. You just score in the second and third quarter. You score again in the first quarter. You score just a couple more touchdowns. It never comes down to that. But if all you can manage is 2 touchdowns, then you allow a 23-second stretch in the final 68 seconds to dictate the outcome of the game. Don't allow it to come down to that. Score more. And it doesn't matter if you screw up 3 times in 23 seconds. The issue's offense. And that's what Pat Narduzzi is going to have to come to terms with if he hasn't already when the season ends. He's going to have to make a decision about, well, what do you do about that? See if we have more super chatters in here because we are getting close to the end of our hour. Wow. You guys got a lot of chats in here. A lot of people have a lot of things to say, and I appreciate that. I want to get through as many as these I can. Let's see. All right, I'm going to just scroll to the top of the chats. If anybody else has a super chat, if they want to join the conversation and get a comment, a comment read or a question answered, you could be a super chatter, and we'll get to you before the end here in the next 10 minutes or so. But let's see here. Benjamin Glazer asks, in all seriousness, does Pitt have any standing to challenge the call post end of game, and why wasn't it reviewed? Well, not after the end of game. I mean, you can't really challenge it. You could send it to the ACC and just sort of point it out as a call that you have an issue with or a call you disagree with, you want to complain about, but you're not going to get it changed. I don't know what the official review process is. I don't know if someone from upstairs needed to buzz the officials and say, hey, we need to look at that and determine exactly where he went down. I think it's like the NFL. I don't think you can actually challenge the play in the final 2 minutes, to challenge this. I mean, you effectively would be challenging the spot of the ball, which I think is something that can be reviewed. It's interesting to me that by all, as far as I could tell, that it was never actually reviewed. That the officials and the people, in the booth and everybody didn't take a look at that just to make sure of when he started to slide. I would think that spot of the ball is a reviewable call, but is a judgment call. There needs to not leave it up to any, he learned his lesson. I'm sure he's going to run an extra yard or two before he starts to slide next time. Josh Newark says Christian just needs to run out of bounds, just get the first down. Yeah, I agree. Wolf HD says, just like that, all the hype about this team dies again. All the bowl game hopes are out of the window. I mean, I can't disagree. Because, we talked a lot this week about the path to get to 6 wins. And it was, you had to take care of business against a team like Wake. You have to take care of business against a team like Syracuse and a team like Boston College. And then you have to put on your best game and go beat Duke or, somehow pull out a win against, Notre Dame or Florida State. You could not afford to blow this game. You already blew the Virginia Tech game. You already blew the West Virginia game. You already blew the Cincinnati game. You couldn't blow another one and still have a realistic shot at 6 wins because you're just too inconsistent. Is this team talented enough to beat Syracuse, Boston College, Duke, and give Notre Dame a game? Yes, they are talented enough to do that. Are they consistent enough? No. As evidenced by today, as evidenced by the Virginia Tech game, as evidenced by the West Virginia and Cincinnati games. You can say, well, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, that was Phil Dracovic. Now they have Christian Barrett. That's right, but they were still too inconsistent, even with Barrett quarterback, to win today. And so if you're that inconsistent, you're not going to be able to string together those wins. It's just not going to happen. So now you're saying, well, is there a path to get to 5 wins? I thought it was bad enough when we were talking last week about a path to get to 6 wins. Now we're talking about a path to 5? Ugly. Let's see. Mark Shilaju says, if Pitt's 5 losses, this one was the worst. They're on a third-team quarterback. Caleb Junko was just horrible, and despite only scoring 17 points, it was the defense that lost this game. Ultimately the defense needed to make one more stop. Yeah, they did. There's no question about that. They gave up a 10-yard pass on 3rd and 11. They gave up a 24-yard pass on 4th and 1, and that was a huge play. That was the game. You make a stop there. And they were in their base defense on 4th and 1, which is understandable. You had reasonable expectation of Wake Forest handing the ball off to try to get a first down and then spike it and keep going. And they take a shot and they get it. And they get 24 yards out of it. The defense had a chance to seal the win there, for sure. But I can't put the game, just like I'm looking at it and saying, well, the offense scored a touchdown in the final 2 minutes to take a lead. This game's not on the offense. This loss isn't on the offense. It is on the offense. This loss is on the offense for being unable to put the game away far sooner than the final 2 minutes or final minute of the game. Yeah, the defense had a chance at the end to close it out. But I can't really fault the defense. Final stats, let me see what the final numbers were. Wake Forest had 323 yards of offense. And yeah, a whole bunch of them came in the fourth quarter. There's no question about it. Let me see the fourth quarter stats. I think I have fourth quarter. Yeah, Wake Forest had almost 200 yards in the fourth quarter. Pitt had 152 yards in the fourth quarter. So, both teams sort of got it going in the fourth quarter. They picked up a bunch of yards in the fourth quarter. I can't blame the defense. I can't blame the defense for this loss. Wait. Pitt had 400 yards, guys. I feel like we should celebrate that. Should we do another shot for Pitt having a 400-yard game? First 400-yard game of the season. Come on, we only have a few minutes left. Let's all look at the positive side. Let's get your drink out. Pitt had a 400-yard game. I put on Twitter a poll a couple of weeks ago. Who would have a 400-yard game first, Pitt or the Steelers? And my friends, and maybe we can still count this as being part of the Steelers week because they haven't played yet. But Pitt got a 400-yard game, everybody. Is that our first 2-shot game? I think that might be the first game we've done 2 shots. But they had a 400-yard game. So we got to celebrate it, I guess. And here we are. I'm talking about offense being the problem after Pitt had a 400-yard game, had a 300-yard passing game, had a 100-yard rushing game, had a 300-yard passer, a 100-yard rusher, and a 100-yard receiver. And I'm talking about how the offense lost the game. Because they did. Too many empty drives throughout the middle of the game when they could have put it away and put the pressure on Marucci to win the game. But they never applied that pressure. They let Wake Forest hang around, and it came back to bite them. And now they're 2-5. See if any last-minute super chats came in. Anybody else want to get their final word in? Actually, Wolf HD has a good comment here. What's wild to me is that Pitt never attacked the middle of the field until that last touchdown drive. All the pass plays were out routes, which worked at the start, but Wake adjusted quickly. And that's the thing. You run all those out routes. At a certain point, you've got to start, playing out that. Because, Wake Forest started reading those out routes and playing those out routes and defending those out routes. Well, you got to turn them into double moves, out and goes, and things like that. Take advantage of. This is supposed to be a chess match, right? You're supposed to set things up early in the game that you then take advantage of and capitalize on later in the game. You use the tendency. You create the tendency, and then you use the tendency against the defense. It never really felt like Pitt did that. It never really felt like they were able to use those tendencies that they had created early in the game to use them against Wake Forest. They just kept doing the same things. Even on that touchdown drive when they threw the deeper out, the 14-yard out to or that pass on the sideline to Bub Means, the 14-yard pass to get a first down. Passes like that, and then passes over the middle. Dejon Reynolds, 2 big catches over the middle for big gains, 30-yard gains that were crucial plays and clutch plays. The Kenny Johnson touchdown. By the way, shout out to Kenny Johnson. I wondered if the next sort of step on his evolution would be to get that first receiving touchdown, and he got it. And looked good. He didn't really play a lot. I'll be interested to see the snap counts, but he looked pretty strong making that touchdown catch. I really thought we were going to have a post-game show after a win here. And have 2 back-to-back. 2 post-game shows after wins back-to-back. But fortunately, Pitt blows it at the end through some dumb mistakes, some real mistakes, poor decisions, and an offense that just never could shut it out. Never could close the game out. Just kind of scrolling through, seeing if everybody else has anything to say. Yeah. XX Kohan XX says, why not be aggressive on more than 2 drives per game? Yeah, you're right. He's a Dallastown grad. Or might be talking about Kenny Johnson. Anyway, all right. I think this will be about all we're going to do here today. But Pitt loses. What was the final? 21-17. Pitt's 2-5. We'll have morning Pitt videos, of course, throughout the week. Hey, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Why don't you do that? YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I never even gave all the promo things, like talking about our YouTube channel or Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all the Pitt coverage. I'm going to go over there and start writing things after a couple shots and a couple beers. It should be a good time to start writing about the game. We'll see what Pat Narduzzi and the players had to say after the game. We'll get those videos online as soon as we can. And then we'll write about this thing. But we'll also have morning Pitt videos every day of the week right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So subscribe so you never miss any of those videos. Pitt basketball at a scrimmage today. Did you see that? We got some stats and some notes from that on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. So go check that out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right. Well, we'll have Pitt coverage all through the week, of course, and get you ready for Pitt. Who's next? Notre Dame? Sounds like a game they can win, right? Just got to score more than 2 touchdowns. All right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. Thanks to everybody in the chat and all the super chatters. We appreciate it. It's it may not be always fun to watch these games, but I think we enjoy our little post-game experiences here. So I appreciate you all tuning in and sharing with all the other Pitt fans who are here on the post-game show. Thanks again for tuning in. It's been fun, I guess. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday with the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.